This is Karie Bible, and I'm here for another week of my Hollywood Forever Cemetery Tour talk. So feel free to say hi or something just so I know everybody's here and this is working. Um, I've got some news to announce. First off, I would really like to thank the really nice people at Discover Los Angeles. I did a virtual tour for them last week, and they were very nice people. It was a great experience, and the attendance was really huge. I was shocked. And it's now there is a link available so you can watch it anytime actually on the internet. And I just want to thank everybody once again so much for your support and for turning out for that. So thank you. Also, I am planning to make a comeback or a return, as Gloria Swanson said, in Sunset Boulevard. So basically, in June, I'm going to try to start doing private tours, and they will need to be by appointment only. Everybody will obviously have to social distance, have to wear a face mask, pay in advance, and I'm going to cap the groups at about 5 people. So I'm looking to start doing that in June. I'm still fortunate enough for the time being anyway to have my day job, because I do have another job. So usually Saturday, Sunday days are the times that I'm available. So if anybody wants to do a private tour in the month of June, under the restrictions that I had mentioned, please just let me know and we will make arrangements. I'm hoping, fingers crossed, to return to doing public tours in the month of July. But again, like everything and everybody right now, plans are very, very tentative. So we're just gonna have to kind of see how June goes, see how the next several weeks play out, and I'll keep you guys posted. So I wanted to talk about two stars this week because why not? It would be fun. And the first star I wanted to talk to you guys about this week is not a movie star, but I think it's a fascinating person at Hollywood Forever that very few people really know about, and I think they should. She is definitely worthy of your attention, and that is Mabel Fairbanks. So last week I talked about Doug Fairbanks, and I'm sure the logical thing would be this week to talk about Doug Fairbanks Jr., which, fear not, I will be getting to him eventually. But I felt like the story of Mabel Fairbanks was one that I really, really wanted to tell this week. Mabel was the very first African American figure skater to ever rise to prominence. And Mabel was born in November of 1915. She had a very, very rough childhood and basically wound up homeless in New York City. And a woman saw her sleeping in the park and needed a babysitter. So she hired Mabel Fairbanks to come babysit her children. And Mabel would look out the window of the home where she babysat in Central Park, and she would see kids skating at a local skating rink. And she longed to skate as well. That was her dream. At one point, she did have a relative that she stayed with, an uncle, who helped her. And of course, at this time, due to horrible racism, Mabel was not allowed in the skating rinks that had paid admission. She could probably go to a public one, but the skating ones that had paid admission, she wasn't allowed in. But she wasn't about to back down. So Mabel would just wait until all of the other white skaters had left, and then the skating rink relented and would let her practice after the other patrons had left. She also bought her first pair of ice skates at a pawn shop for $1. They were 2 sizes too big, and so she had to stuff them with cotton. But again, she wasn't going to be deterred. This uncle that was very supportive of her actually built her an ice rink where they lived, a little tiny 6x6 ice rink with dry ice and metal and wood, and she was largely self-taught. And Mabel, it was very clear from the beginning, was a natural athlete, had a dazzling performance style and athleticism that quickly gained her attention. Well, sadly, due to her race, Mabel was not admitted to any skating club. And at the time, if you weren't in any skating club, you couldn't compete on the national or international levels. Mabel was not even allowed to compete in the Olympics, obviously, because of this either. So Mabel went overseas to Europe, where she found it a lot easier to perform and be accepted. And she performed in ice shows in Europe and South America and around the world. She really broke so many barriers. And at one point, I have some notes here, she actually performed at the Gay Blades Ice Arena in New York City to mixed race audiences that were integrated. And as she got older, Mabel transitioned from being a figure skater into being a coach. And she moved to Los Angeles in the 1940s. And she became, in 1997, the very first African American ever inducted in the United States Figure Skating Hall of Fame. And she also worked with future Olympic champions Scott Hamilton, Christy Yamaguchi, and Rudy Galendo. And some of you that live locally in Los Angeles, you might be familiar with the old Culver City Skate Club. It's a very vintage looking building on Culver City and Sepulveda Boulevard in Culver City. And it's got a big vintage looking figure skater sign right out in front. Sadly, it's now a Harbor Freight, but anyway, they kept the figure skating sign. And that was a skate club for a long, long time. Mabel petitioned that skate club to allow the very first African American to ever be admitted. And that was one of her pupils named Richard Ilwell III. And in 1965, the Culver City Skate Club admitted him, and he would be the first African American ever admitted to a skate club in the United States. Also, Mabel coached a gentleman named Atoy Wilson, who was the first African-American skater to win a United States title. And Atoy later said about Mabel that, quote, she put a lot of people on podiums that she never got to stand on herself. And she really was an incredibly brave woman who broke so many barriers. And when she had a figure skating school in Los Angeles, she made sure it was diverse and integrated. So people from every religion, every race, every background, rich and poor, she coached everybody and didn't turn anybody away. She coached the children of Nat King Cole, of Gregory Peck, and truly was a trailblazing woman who did not accept the limitations of her times, but instead fought against it and rose above it. And I think that's such an important story. To me, she's like the female Jackie Robinson of figure skating. And I really wish more people knew about her. I hope that someday there will be a film about her, because I think that would be so interesting and certainly inspiring as well. And Mabel was posthumously inducted into the International Women's Sports Hall of Fame after she died. She died in the year 2001 at the age of 85 years old, and she is buried at Hollywood forever. If you want to visit her grave, there's a big bridge that goes right up into the Clark Mausoleum in the center of the pond. Mabel is right next to that bridge. Her grave had some brush right on top of it, and the grave has some little figure skates on it, and it says, "Skatingly yours, Mabel Fairbanks." So after I do my talk today, I'm going to post a few links about Mabel so you can read about her, see some pictures of her, and really discover this incredible trailblazing woman. Okay, and the next star I want to talk about today is a movie star. Her name is Mary Nolan. Mary Nolan had a very difficult and tragic life. She was born December 18th in 1902. Her mother died when she was young. Her father, unable to raise her, basically sent her off to an orphanage, and she was bounced around from foster care to orphanages in a pretty grim and horrific childhood. When she grew up to be a young woman, she was extraordinarily beautiful, and she wound up landing work in the Ziegfeld Follies. And Ziegfeld admired her beauty, her style, her elegance, but unfortunately, tragedy intervened. She got involved with a vaudevillian named Frank Tenney. Frank Tenney was married, although Mary Nolan did not know it at the time. And by the way, I should also mention she went by a ton of different names, but she didn't know it at the time, and they began a very torrid affair. Unfortunately, Frank Tenney was also extremely abusive and beat Mary very savagely. At one point, he beat her so badly, she called the paramedics, she filed a civil suit against him, and it became a gigantic scandal in the world of the Ziegfeld Follies, and Florence Ziegfeld wanted nothing to do with it. He felt that it was an embarrassment and would drag the Follies down, and so he fired Mary from the Follies. So, surprisingly, in spite of everything that had happened, the civil suit was dropped. Frank Tinney went over to Europe, and Mary followed him over to Europe. So she went over to Europe, and the destructive affair continued. Well, Mary ended it and then moved to Germany. And in Germany, she worked in silent film from about 1924 or 1925 or so, but then was called back to America to work in film again. But they kind of had to reinvent Mary, basically, because of all the scandal and the drama that surrounded her, both off screen and on. The producers felt she had to change her name and sort of reboot or restart her life, which is what she did. And she managed to make a few good films. My favorite probably is West of Zanzibar with Lon Chaney in 1928. She was also with John Gilbert in the silent film Desert Nights. Unfortunately, when Mary returned to Hollywood, she began an affair with another married man. This one was Eddie Mannix of MGM. And this affair was also incredibly destructive. Mannix beat Mary, abused her badly, and she had a series of operations because her body was in such horrible shape after these two incredibly damaging relationships. And then Mary started having problems with drugs and alcohol. So between the scandals and then the drugs and alcohol, she was fired from Universal, where she was making films. And she sort of lashed out at Universal and felt that the situation was very unfair. But Carl Laemmle defended his decision by saying that she was temperamental, difficult to work with, and all of the scandals surrounding her made it an impossible situation. So Mary got out of the relationship with Mannix and married someone, married for the first time, but it was also, again, a very sad and destructive relationship. And the rest of Mary's life would sort of become a string of calamities, from singing in very rundown nightclubs for money. She was confined to a psychiatric hospital, actually on a couple of occasions, struggled with substance abuse, with debt, with lawsuits. I mean, it's sort of a checklist of every tragic and horrible thing that could befall someone. And it finally culminated in her death at age 45. Well, her birth year is a bit in dispute, but they think it was age 45 on Halloween, October 31st of 1948. And she is interred at the Abbey of the Psalms Mausoleum near the ceiling over the top of the door at Hollywood Forever. And I want to say this when I talk about Mary Nolan. It's easy to judge people when you're reading about their life or looking into their life and career and all the circumstances surrounding it. But I try very hard not to do that, because you never know what life is like until you've walked in someone else's shoes. And also, I think a lot of people, it's easy to go, oh, she was nuts or she's crazy, or easy to kind of judge people and stigmatize them. But the truth is, there was a lot of drug addiction in Mary's life, a horrible childhood, and very likely mental illness. And at least today, we have a lot more resources for treating, helping, and dealing with these problems. But in Mary's lifetime, it wasn't quite like that. And it was really incredibly stigmatized to admit that you needed help. And it wasn't the same world that it is today. And a lot of people just self-medicated for lack of another outlet. So I try to look at their lives with compassion and kindness, which I think is something the world definitely needs more of today. And even though, like a lot of stars, she struggled with horrible issues behind the scenes and off screen, Mary is still a beautiful woman, a talented woman. And to see her greatest performance, again, my opinion, but I definitely encourage you to see the Lon Chaney film West of Zanzibar. And as an aside, I think Lon Chaney really brought out a lot of the best of many of his leading ladies. Both Joan Crawford and Loretta Young worked with Lon Chaney very early on in their careers. And both stars said that he taught them so much about acting and that he was so kind and helpful to them. So I have no doubt he was probably equally kind and helpful to Mary as well. And another thing to kind of think about is that Hollywood's not an easy place. And a lot of people come out here with hopes and dreams and goals, and those don't always work out like we think they will. And it's kind of hard to live with that disappointment, with that frustration, and even people that became huge stars, that was no guarantee that their lives were going to turn out well or happy or like they had dreamed about either. So I think life throws all of us curveballs that we were not expecting, i.e., the pandemic we're all in right now. Life kind of deals us hands, and we just have to do the best we can. And again, this isn't easy. And I love to tell the stories of some of the more obscure people at Hollywood Forever because everybody counts and everybody matters. And there's a story underneath every single one of those headstones. And the main tour that I do at the cemetery, I call Cemetery of the Stars. And it's basically the greatest hits, if you will, Valentino, DeMille, etc. But I do two other tours by private appointment. One is called Jewish Heritage, about the Jewish residents. And the other is called Hidden Hollywood, which kind of gives me the chance to tell a lot of these really obscure actor stories and shine a light on some lives that have largely been forgotten. So if anyone wants to book that, I really enjoy that one. And I really enjoy sharing their stories, their memories, their work, and their lives with other people. And of course, I do want to continue to plug a few small businesses that I care a lot about. This pandemic obviously has been very difficult for many, and a lot of businesses, and I do really worry about businesses, and especially the small ones, because for a lot of the small business owners, this is so hard. I mean, it's already hard enough without this. So first off, I am wearing a red and white striped 1930s day dress today from Paper Moon Vintage. If anybody has the extra funds, they are a fabulous business. Obviously can't be open right now, but they do sell on, I think, Instagram, on Etsy, again, if you can support local small business. And of course, my beloved Larry Edmunds Bookshop in Hollywood. That store has been so supportive of me, of so many of my fellow film historians, tour guides, colleagues, etc. And they've taught me so much. They've ordered me books. They've encouraged me to get certain books. They're just a wonderful resource. And I have a lot of love in my heart for that bookstore. And personally, I don't want to live in a world where bookstores don't exist. So I try to put my money where my mouth is every chance I get and order from a bookstore when I can do so. So there's two books I'd like to recommend to you this week. And by the way, I've already called Jeff in advance at Larry Edmunds. They have both of them. So if you're interested, here we go. Their first one is called Dangerous Curves Atop Hollywood Hills by Michael Anchorage. And I'll post pictures of these two because the text may be coming in backwards here. But this book is the lives, careers, and misfortunes of 14 hard luck girls of the silent screen. And this profiles 14 different women who all either achieved a measure of success or were beginning to when tragedy intervened, be it far beyond their control or not. It just kind of goes to show that for every big star out here, there's hundreds, thousands of people who struggled and strived for that same thing and whose lives didn't turn out the same way. And it's interesting to kind of discover their stories, their backgrounds, why they came out here, what they wanted to do, and how they all ended up. And to me, just my opinion, but I think many of these stories are every bit as interesting as the big stars are as well. So I recommend Dangerous Curves Atop Hollywood Hills by Michael Anchorage. And then the other book I recommend, both of these books, by the way, have chapters about Mary Nolan. So there is a little bit of crossover. But Dangerous Curves is only about silent film actresses. The next book I'm going to recommend is about silent and sound, and it covers 23 actresses. And again, both books have chapters on Mary Nolan. This book is very new. It's called Hollywood's Hard Luck Ladies. And like the other book, this book delves into the lives, the careers, the trajectory of these women and what happened to them and why. And it's also very, very interesting. So either one of these books would make a great read. It's kind of episodic too, so you could just read a chapter a day or something like that. And they're easy to get through and really, really interesting. So if there are any other stars you guys want me to talk about or cover, I will take requests. I've already got quite a few, so please keep sending them in. I love doing this, and it's kind of been an unexpected benefit of the pandemic. To be honest, I started doing this mainly just for myself, thinking, okay, I can't give tours in real life, and I need a way to ply my trade, I guess, if you will. So I was doing this largely just for me, but I've been able to connect with some terrific film fans around the world, meet some new friends. So it's really been great. And it's kind of helped to lift my spirits during this pandemic and hopefully some other people's as well. So if you have questions, if you want to book a private tour, if you want to make a request, send them my way and I am more than happy to take them. So, on that note, I thank all of you for tuning in. I also would like to plug a few of my other colleagues and friends who I think are incredibly awesome as well. Every Saturday morning, usually my friend April, who does the Walk Old Hollywood tour, she does either Instagram chats or Zoom chats, and she is fantastic. I highly recommend her. I joke we're kind of a Saturday morning double feature. Go to April and then me and get your Hollywood content. And also, this past week, I attended an internet lecture by Vincent Price's daughter, Victoria Price. I've always been a huge Vincent Price fan. I have 2 of his cookbooks, and I was very excited to attend this virtual lecture that she gave. And it was unexpectedly inspiring and moving. I really never thought I'd be sitting at my desk crying my head off during a Vincent Price lecture, but that's kind of the world we live in right now. It was just so moving and so good when she talked about Vincent's life and what life meant to him and leaving a legacy of kindness and love. And it was so good. And she's going to do a lot more of these, by the way, as well. So please follow April Klemmer, follow Victoria Price, and also Kimberly Truler. She is a fashion expert. She's got several fashion lectures coming up. And I'm on the board of Retro Format. And on June 8th, we are going to have a screening of Sasu Hayakawa's film, The Cheat, directed by Cecil B. DeMille. So if you love connecting with film fans and you love seeing all sorts of great Hollywood content during this time on the internet, please follow all of these people. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me. And thank you so much again for tuning in and supporting me. I'm so grateful, and I'll see you next week.